Hey everybody, welcome to Handi Quilter's Watch and Learn. Today we're going to show you how to do 5 simple grid-based designs to spice up your next quilting project. I'm Kim Sandberg, and with me today is
Kristina Whitney.
And we're both studio educators here at Handi Quilter. Now Kristina, grid-based designs, one of your favorite things to quilt, right?
Yes.
So tell us what a grid-based design is.
Okay, so a grid-based design is any kind of design you do on a grid.
Cool. Simple.
How was that?
That totally works for me. I love it.
So grid-based designs, you can use them by the piecing that you've done and make those be your grids. You can actually stencil on grids, and we're going to show you how to do some of this a little bit later.
Okay.
And the best part is that the grids can be as big or as small as you want them.
Okay.
So we actually have a couple of samples here
Oh,
of some grid designs. So let's go ahead and we're going to look at this quilt here first. And Kim, this is your quilt. So why don't you show us which ones you used a grid on?
A grid on. So the first one I used was actually this one right here as a grid base. You can see that there's lines that go straight across, and then there's a little design in here. It's like a little snowflake or a sparkle, I guess you could call it. And it was really, I used a 1-inch grid stencil that I just stenciled onto this fabric. And then I stitched straight across the lines, and wherever the grids crossed is where I created these little designs in between. And it was really easy to do. I didn't have to use rulers, but I actually ended up with pretty straight lines, even though I was free motion quilting, because of the grid. So I really like that one. I know there's one other one. Oh, this one right here. Now this one was a little bit of an experiment for me. This design right here is another grid-based design. And I was kind of experimenting with this one. I look at it and I think of sand dollars. Can you kind of see that, where it's got like a circle with the little circles inside of it? Yeah. To me, it kind of looks like sand dollars. I don't even know exactly what the design's called, but I stitched there. The line was right through the middle of these, and it went down like that. So I knew exactly where to create those little designs in there. So those are the 2 grid-based designs I used in this quilt.
Super fun.
I know that you did some on this quilt, right?
Yes, I actually did quite a bit. So this was my Dream Big panel, and my goal was to do all of this free motion. By the end, I was running out of ideas.
I bet.
But I did do several that are grids.
Okay.
So this one right here, this is a grid. It's just kind of got diamond shapes. Yeah. And so you are pretty much playing connect the dot.
Right, exactly.
But then you get a finished product that looks like you did all this immaculate work.
Yeah, exactly.
We've got some puzzle pieces here.
That is such a fun one as grid-based.
So these are puzzle pieces.
That's really fun.
This one here was grid-based.
I can move over. There we go. Oh, wow. Okay, so that's interesting because I can really see the puzzles. And the other 2 that you said where the grid was on this one, I wouldn't have thought of this one being grid-based. But now that I really look at it, I can envision a grid behind it.
Yeah, and that's something that we're going to really work with in this episode and in future episodes with our grid work, is showing how to actually use those grids.
Cool.
Whether you're going to stitch on the grids, in the grids, around the grids.
Gotcha.
But to make everything work.
Okay.
So this is a fun one here.
Yeah.
I'll move that in there.
This one right here, I remember when I first started quilting many, many moons ago, this was a texture that I so wanted to do. And it took me forever to figure out how to do it. And that was, I watched a video and somebody showed how to do it with a grid stencil.
And it makes it so easy.
Yeah. So cute.
So I guess the point of this is to teach people new designs that are quick and easy to do.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got some others on here. I don't know if we want to point them all out. We've got this guy here.
Let's do that one.
This one.
That's this one right here, especially, is one that I think when you initially look at it, I would not think that that was on a grid. I've quilted this design without a grid, but I can see how when I quilted it kind of leaned one way, whereas yours is nice and straight because you did use that grid behind it.
Yep. I'm going to point out one other one because this is what we're going to focus on for today.
Okay.
So this one right here. This is a continuous curve design.
This petal right there. Yeah.
And you can see how little that is.
It is.
If you look at the quilt that's hanging behind us, it is the exact same pattern, but on a larger scale.
Yeah, and this, so what is this design? traditionally called. So this quilt, so tell us about this quilt, Kristina. I kind of love that you brought this in.
So this is a quilt that my grandmother pieced, and it's the first quilt that I ever made on a Longarm.
Oh, really?
Or quilted on a Longarm.
Quilted on a Longarm.
Yes.
That's so cool.
So it's got the continuous curve. I went to a class for training and they showed us this design. I thought, that is the coolest thing ever. I've got all of these quilts that are just squares.
Yeah.
I could have done an edge to edge all over it, but I wanted to try something new. Well, actually, since it was my first one, of course it was new.
Of course it was new.
Yeah. So you can do this on any scale.
Okay.
And again, you can use the piecing, which I did on this quilt, as my grid.
Yeah.
Or you can stencil on a grid.
Okay, very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I love that. That is a quick and easy free motion design for sure.
Yep.
Okay, so let's take a look at this. I'm going to move your Dream Big over here.
We're going to sneak down here onto the frame here. And stencils, you can get them in all different sizes.
Right.
So you can do, you said you did a 1-inch grid on your quilt. This one I think is 3 inches maybe?
Yeah, that looks like about a 3-inch grid. Sure, we'll call that 3 inches.
Yep, 3 inches works.
3 inches.
But you can find stencils online. You can make your own. You know, it's not super fancy. A lot of times I've even taken just a cutting ruler, like the long 24-inch, and I'll draw
lines,
a grid using that ruler and a washable marker.
Exactly. That's perfect.
Okay. So for this grid, I'm just going to pounce.
So, okay, let's talk about pounce for a second, because this is always the great question. So this is quilt pounce. It's really great for marking with stencils, but Kristina, what's the right way to use this? Because
you're going to pounce either like on the bar of your machine, on your hand, on your leg, wherever you want, just to get the chalk loaded into the sponge here.
Okay.
So you'll notice I've got some blue chalk in here.
Okay.
So once it's already loaded, I'm just going to hold my stencil down and I'm going to rub over top of my stencil.
You just
make sure yep.
Swipe or rub.
Swipe or no swiping.
That's right. That's what I always think of. Does that date us?
If anybody knows what we're talking about, please comment below. Yeah. Tell us how cool we are.
I watched way too much of that with my kids when they were little.
Okay, I might have over swiped on this one.
That's okay.
But when you take that up, you've got your grid that's there.
Look at that. That's perfect. And the real advantages to using the pounce is it comes off really easily. There's different ways to use it. I mean, you can just rub it with your hand. I know that even just as you're quilting, it kind of almost bounces off. But be sure, and we always recommend testing.
Yes.
Make sure that it's going to come off. I know quite a few. The white pounce is like an iron off one. So is that right?
It actually comes in iron off and wipe away.
Okay.
So you've got to make sure you know which kind of pounce you have.
Okay.
Because you don't want to iron on or try to
try
to iron off, but actually iron on the pounce. So know which kind you have. I'm always really kind of hesitant with the colored pounce myself personally.
Me too.
But test it on the fabric that you're using, and then you can go from there.
Use it with confidence.
So
okay. So this is great. So we set up this grid. We're just showing you this on this fabric, but we actually have a quilt loaded.
Yeah, let's move this out of the way here.
This quilt, we were actually cleaning out some stuff in the back room, and we found the perfect quilt.
Yes.
Top to do grid-based designs on, because it's just a big grid, a big checkerboard.
It is a big checkerboard. But before we actually start stitching, I'm going to do some drawing.
Oh, let's do that.
And go through the steps of how to do continuous curve.
Perfect.
Okay, so I'm going to go over here to the board. So I've created a grid already on the board here, 3 by 3.
Perfect.
I just want to emphasize that the continuous curve can be as many squares as you want.
Right.
Whatever fits in your throat space, and as long as your throat space is what you can quilt. So the first process is we're going to go straight across the top all the way. So I'm going to do a arc, arc, arc. You'll notice I'm attempting to make the depth of these arcs about the same.
Okay.
So if you look at the quilt that I did behind us, really close, you'll notice it's not all the same, but you'll never notice it unless you're like really analyzing it.
When you step back and look, all you see is that beautiful continuous curve.
Exactly. Okay, so I did all the way across, and again, it can be as many squares across as you have.
Okay.
Then I'm going to come down 1 square. Okay, come down 1.
Okay.
And then I'm going to serpentine all the way across the whole entire row.
Coming back.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm going to serpentine all the way down and all the way back.
Okay. Now, what's the reasoning behind doing the serpentine versus just bumping up to the points like you did on that first row?
Okay, let me draw in here. This is not part of the stitching. This is different. If I do 1, 2, 3, and then I come back, it's kind of hard to make sure I hit those points exactly.
Okay.
But if I do curves and come back, I'm always going to get a point.
Very good. I like that.
So,
okay, so it's kind of a built-in fail-safe.
yes. So when you're doing this with rulers, it's a little bit more tedious because you're having to move the ruler back and forth.
Right.
But it does help you to get those points. Okay, where did I end up?
So you,
okay. I came
over
all the way across, all the way back.
Okay.
Now I'm going to come down 1 more.
Okay.
Same thing, across. And I'm drawing at an angle, so this is going to go kind of crazy, but
it looks great.
You get the point.
Yeah.
We're going to go down 1 more. And again, you would go down as many rows as you can in your throat space.
Gotcha.
When you get to the bottom of your throat space, we're going to come over 1.
Do the bounce over.
Yep.
Okay.
And we want to come now and fill this up and down. So I'm going to serpentine. And I'm looking at the point that I'm aiming for.
Right.
I'm not looking at where I'm quilting. I'm looking at that next spot. So across 1, and I'm going to be looking here. Across. And then I'm going to be looking here. I'm going to come up, 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 down, 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 over 1. And now I'm going to come all the way up, and I'll end at that same place that I started.
Okay, I love that because it's one continuous stitch line. We didn't have to cut your thread at all.
Not at all.
I love it.
So that makes it pretty easy. And I'll see if we can add a little diagram that has the steps for this.
Yeah.
And again, this design can be done in many different ways. This is just the direction that I usually go, what I'm used to. If you find a different path that's continuous for you, do it.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing is making it continuous so you don't have to break those threads.
Exactly. Which is the real the goal. Nobody wants to cut threads.
Okay.
So we're going to stitch this now, right?
Let's stitch it out. Since I want to stay in my throat space and we're going to be doing different versions, I'm going to do just a 2 by 2.
Okay.
So I'm only going to work right here. This is going to be my quilt top.
Okay.
So I'm going to bring this over and bring up my bobbin thread. And I'm going to give you a little tip right here.
Okay.
Since we have, since we have our binding side here, I'm not going to aim for the very edge.
Right.
I'm going to aim for 1/4 of an inch in.
That way you don't lose that up in the binding.
Correct.
I like
Yep.
that. Okay. Thinking ahead.
Thinking ahead. Okay, ready for this?
We're ready.
Okay.
Let's see if Kristina's going to sing her song.
Ooh, that was beautiful. Okay, over all the way, down 1. Which song am I supposed to sing? Serpentine across.
Your little...
Whee!
Yeah,
that one?
There's that one?
Oh, that one went kind of crazy.
It's going to look great.
Okay, another thing. Whee! When you're quilting this, you're more than likely not going to have solid squares with bright orange thread on the top.
Very true.
So give yourself a break. I'm going to give myself a break right now.
You'll most likely have a thread that'll blend.
Yes,
a little more.
yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, I'm going to come down.
Okay.
Now, I mentioned looking where you're aiming for.
Right.
For these, they are kind of big. So what I'm doing is I'm going to try to aim for this middle high point.
Okay.
To see how deep I want to get it. Once I get to that point, then I'm going to learn or look at this next point.
That makes sense. So this time you're going to come over to the bottom of this one, and then you're going to serpentine up, right?
Yep, because this is the bottom.
Okay.
Woo! Another tip when you're quilting, don't have a friend leaning on the bar while you're quilting.
I just realized
I'm like,
that.
whoa, that one went crazy. We have fun.
I'll stand up straight.
I'm totally leaning on the bar. And coming back down, looking where I'm aiming for, over one, and all the way up.
Back up. I love that you finish where you start on the salto. I think that makes it easy to, you know, keep track of where you are. You know what your end goal point is that you're kind of like aiming for.
Yes. Yeah. And a lot of times if you are doing this inside of other designs, it's a good way to get back to where you started, and then you can continue on going to your next thing. All
right. So this is the basic continuous curve. It looks great. It's got a few other names too. Some people call it orange pill. It's like a classic quilting design.
Yeah.
But you're going to show us some different like versions of this now, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm so excited.
Okay. Well, the next one, I'm going to just erase these directions just so I don't confuse everybody too much. And I should probably change colors. Okay. Got a lot of lines going on there.
Yeah.
Let's go to, how about purple?
Purple's good.
So I'm going to leave this existing continuous curve that we did.
Okay.
And I'm going to build on it.
Okay.
So I started here, I ended here, so I'm already there. I'm going to do the same curve, the continuous curve, using a different arc.
Okay.
So I'm going to do a deeper arc. So
Okay.
it's going to come down, down.
And you're going to stitch this in the same block? So essentially you're building on that, or are we going to move over and stitch on the next block, set of blocks?
You could do either way.
Okay.
So for this sample, I'm going to leave one block just single.
Okay.
And then the next block we'll do double.
Okay.
So we're going to come down one, serpentine, making sure that arc is a little bit deeper than the previous one.
Cool. I like how it gives that, it's almost like an echo effect.
Yes.
With that other line there. It looks really great.
And I'm using different color pen. You could be wild and crazy and use different colors of thread if you wanted. Just the look that you're going for. Ooh, that one went crazy.
Remember, once is a mistake, twice is a design choice.
Okay, let's make them all crazy. Over one and all the way back up to the top.
Looks fantastic.
So a different look to it.
Okay, just a deeper arc, as you mentioned. So let's see this one stitched out.
Okay, actually, I'm going to have you hand me just the curvy ruler. I'm not going to put it on, but I would just want to point this out. Okay, so if I were doing this, I could use one side of the curvy ruler to do the kind of the shallow version, and then I could flip it around using that same ruler to get the deeper curve.
Okay, I love that you can do both of those curves just with that one ruler. That's great.
And it's good if you hold it right side up.
The curvy ruler.
Yep. So two curves right there.
Very cool.
You don't even have to change rulers.
No.
You do want to change and put your sure foot on though, instead of the glide foot.
Ruler with the glide foot. Not a great combination.
Okay. So I'm going to stitch out the first one.
Okay.
And let's go.
So you're doing the shallower arc on this first round. Sure. Yes, you are.
So remember when we talked about trying to make the arcs the same depth?
Hey.
Yeah. No so the first one might be that one. You can always go back and change.
That's true.
Some of them are going a little flat. That's okay. That'll just give me more room to do the deeper one.
Yeah.
Over one. And all the way up.
Now for round 2, right?
Round 2.
Okay.
And if you are concerned about the arcs not being perfect, definitely you can use rulers.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So depends on how big I'm doing, how much time I have, how much I'm covering, determines if I'm going to use rulers or free motion. Usually the larger you're doing, the more likely you're going to want to use a ruler because it really shows a lot more.
It's a big arc.
Yeah, the little tiny ones you can get away with.
Yeah, it's easier to keep those maybe a little more consistent.
So we're going to do a deeper one here.
Okay. You know what? You're going all the way across.
All the way up.
You could just stitch across the top over to here.
So fancy. Okay.
So that looks so good. I love that echo with it. Looking at it, I'm actually thinking, you know, if you wanted to have that consistent spacing in between those, you could use the echo feet to do that really easily. To make sure that you're hitting that proper amount of distance at the fullest part of that arc.
Exactly.
So
yeah. One other tip is make sure your wheels are nice and clean.
So that's a great tip, to keep your wheels really clean so that the machine will move nice and smoothly. You don't want to hit that little bump, bump of lint on your tracks.
Yep, this little one right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do the next one. So what's the
Excellent.
next variation of this design that you have?
I'm going to go ahead and erase all of this. Okay. The next one, I don't know its official name. I call it Twirly. That might be its name. Who knows?
Sounds good.
If anybody knows the official name, they
You can
post it.
trademark it.
Yeah. Actually, I can't. Somebody else already has it, I'm sure. Okay. It's the same concept of across, back.
Same stitch path.
Same stitch path, exactly. But instead of just doing a nice arc, we're going to kind of do a bump out and back in.
Oh.
Bump out and back in.
This is one that always gives me trouble.
Out and in.
Okay.
Out and in. Across. Out and back in. So I find that saying things as I'm doing it really helps me stay on my same path. Out and in. And in.
This is when talking to yourself is a proven tool to getting the results you want.
I'm thinking in my head, out and in. Come across the bottom, out and in, up the top. Out and in, out and in, out and in.
It's fun how it gives a little twist.
Yeah. So if you get kind of stumped and you can't remember which direction, if I should be going out here or out there, this one came at the in.
Okay.
So that's where you want to do the out, going that same way, out and in. So the skinny small part, that's where the next out is going to be.
Ah, gotcha. Okay. I think that's what I always do. I tend to get confused and then they get flipped around the other way.
Exactly. That's very common. Out and in, all the way up the top and back to our start point.
Very cool. All right, I'm excited to see this one stitched.
Okay. Out and in, out and in, out and in. This one I didn't serpentine.
Yeah.
But you definitely can.
I can see why you wouldn't though, because you'd be flipping the direction.
Exactly.
And if you're repeating to yourself out and in, out and in,
yeah,
then you have to flip it, and that's probably why I always get confused.
And doing the in and then out gets kind of tricky for me. I like to just prefer my out and in and stick with it.
Out, in, out. Well, that looks great.
And I have to say, this one's a lot more forgiving than just the arcs.
It's a fun design. It's a really fun design. It creates like movement on the quilt.
Exactly. Yep.
I love that.
Yeah. It looks like it's harder.
Yeah, but it's really not.
But like I said, it's very forgiving, and so you don't really notice, okay, my arc's not perfect.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, I can see that. Okay, so what's the next one that you have for us?
Okay, let's go back to the board here.
Yeah.
And erase again.
Back to the drawing board.
Ooh. Our markers are starting to stick. Okay, this next one is using some straight lines.
Okay, so no curve this time, just straight lines.
Yeah, no curves.
Okay.
So I'm going to draw just a little dot in the center, just for a visual of what I'm aiming for. And I'm going to do
as if there's another grid on top of the grid you have.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to just do a shallow straight line coming into that dotted line.
Okay.
And back out.
Okay.
In halfway, out.
Making a V.
Yep. And this one is really nice to use rulers if you want those lines to be nice and straight.
Mm-hmm. So you do serpentine with this one. Okay.
Yeah.
Making a nice diamond there as you serpentine. Very cool.
So you could even leave it with just the diamonds going across the grid.
Yeah.
But we're going to continue on with the continuous, not curve. Okay, that one I didn't quite get to that center point.
That's okay.
No worries.
No worries.
It'll erase.
On the board.
Again, look at where you're aiming for, not where you're at.
Right.
And
so this one you really are aiming for that center point and then for the like crossing point.
Exactly.
Okay.
So right there, center, right there.
Okay.
Up one more. Over one.
Very cool.
So that gives you a completely different look.
Yeah, it does.
And
same stitch path, but completely different look, like you said.
And here's a little tip. If you are new at this and you're not a perfectionist, instead of trying to hit that center point each time, make them kind of wonky.
Oh, yeah.
Make them purposely wonky, and that's your design.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, so let's have you stitch. I'm going to switch sides with you here.
Okay.
Well, let's just stitch this one out.
I like to pause at my points, get a nice good stitch there. And I'm also in cruise mode.
Right.
So that the needle will continue to cycle so that I do get that nice point.
Very nice.
And again, you can do this with a ruler. Yep, I missed my point.
I can see where if I was doing larger ones, I might want to use a ruler, but then again, it's kind of fun, like you said, to have that this is definitely hand-guided design look to it.
I always tell people have fun with it.
Yeah, absolutely. This one reminds me of like a pinwheel or a starfish, depending on what part of the design you're looking at. That even reminds me a little bit of like jacks, like the toy jacks that you play with. That's a really fun design. All right, so you have one more for us, right?
I have one more.
Okay.
Before I move on to the next one, though, this design, you can do this just like you did the first continuous curve, but adding another layer.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to do another layer, but not on top of it.
Okay.
So it's going to have a different look to it.
Okay. I love how this grid, it just creates basically guidelines for you to lay a design on top of.
Yes.
It's just so easy.
Yeah, it helps you to keep things evenly spaced.
Yep.
That's the big thing, the spacing, but also keeping things straight and lined up.
Yeah.
So I love using grids. And like I said earlier, connect the dot, it just makes it so much easier than having this big, huge space that you're trying to fill and being overwhelmed.
Exactly.
It breaks it down for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to use that same center dot.
Okay.
But instead of doing a shallow, I'm going to do a really deep and maybe come in about 1/4 of an inch from that center.
From the center.
On each of those sides.
Okay.
Okay? So I'm going to come in and out.
Okay.
So really deep V's.
Yeah, that's almost
they're not touching the center.
Okay.
But they're coming close to the center.
So you essentially have, well, at least in what you're drawing, you have a 1/2 inch gap.
Yeah.
Okay. And of course you'd adjust depending on the size of the block you're stitching in.
Exactly. And you can do whatever level works for you.
Yeah.
Oh, that one was fun.
It's definitely a hand-guided design. It looks fantastic, Kristina.
I like to say I can stitch better than I can draw.
Yeah.
Some people might argue with that, but
I feel that way too. I feel like when I start drawing, my lines get a little wonky, but when I'm stitching, things seem to just be a little smoother.
You pay more attention when you're actually stitching.
Yeah, that's true. You're also not doing it at an angle like you are on that board.
Yeah. Yeah, drawing on the whiteboard at an angle is fun.
Okay, that looks really cool. That's like X's.
Okay, I just can't take that one.
Now, this is the $20 question here, Kristina. On a quilt, would you go back and rip those stitches out and change it?
If I were doing orange thread on a blue solid fabric, I might
you probably
pick
would,
it out.
Right?
On a regular quilt when I'm using a blending thread, no.
No. Okay.
Okay,
I
so
like that.
We'll test and see how many of these blocks I have to stitch out later.
Okay, let's see. I'm excited to see this stitch path.
Oh, and I was also going to mention that you can actually mark on your quilt those center points, but I didn't do it. So we're going to eyeball it.
Yeah, just some kind of a marking tool.
Yeah, I would probably use one of like the blue water soluble in the light and probably the handy pencil, the iron off.
That'd be perfect.
In the blue, and then just remember which one to iron and which one not to iron. Okay, here we go. Let's get in our starting spot here at 1/4 of an inch in.
With this really deep V, it almost reminds me of quilting a chevron.
Yeah. Chevron's another great thing that you can do with a grid.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just following that same path, except I'm going to go up and down now.
go. Oh, that looks so great, Kristina. I love that. All these different awesome options for grid-based designs. And I love that it's easy to do these really at any scale. I mean, we have pretty big hair, but I've seen these done as small as, I've actually seen you do them as small as like half-inch arcs, really small. But it just creates such a fun, it's just a fun all-over background fill.
Exactly. And I'd love that you can do this at any scale that you want and as many rows across. It's a very versatile design that you can put anywhere. So it could be a fill, it could be an edge to edge. I like to do these as background fills on appliques. So lots and lots of different designs. And there's so many more.
Yeah.
So we're going to continue to do some of these videos, sharing some different grid techniques and designs that we have.
Exactly. And I'm excited for those. We want to say thanks for watching today. Be sure to give us a like and subscribe to our channel, and be sure to have fun quilting this week.